Dawn took its time with the city that had forgotten how to sleep. Night had been a long chain of clamor and flame, and when the eastern sky finally went pale it did so grudgingly, like someone lifting a lid to peer at what noise came from the pot. The sea pushed and whispered beyond the dark curve of the bay, and thousands of windows blinked open as if the city were a great fish stirring at last beneath a net. The banners were wrong on the towers, and they moved stiffly because the wind had shifted in the night. A wolf's head snapped where lions had prowled for years. Every gust made the cloth speak in its coarse, wet language. The stones heard and the gulls understood, and even the stray curs nosing through toppled baskets lifted their heads from fish guts and pricked their ears to it. Robb Stark stood in the shade beneath the great narrowing windows of the throne room, where the first shoulders of daylight slid over the floor in cold bands. They did not reach the throne itself. Iron and shadow kept their own counsel, and the knives of the chair drank darkness where they had always done, king after king, name after name, blood after blood. No one had cleaned the steps. The scuff of boots and the sharp smell of iron filings were still there from the night's work, and a darker stain had dried in the shallow runnels between the flagstones at the foot of the dais. The stain was not wide and not fresh enough to glisten, and that was mercy, if one wanted to count mercies. He had not sat in the chair. He was not sure he ever would. The thing was a trap masquerading as a seat, built by a man who loved traps. It would make a fool of a man who believed it could carry all of his weight. Robb looked at it the way he looked at a rickety bridge before winter, measuring sways, considering what might give and what could be shored up and what ought to be avoided altogether. Beneath the mailed sleeve, his left hand flexed, settled, flexed again. He kept his right hand still. The leather strap at the wrist creaked as he shifted. Gray wind lay with his muzzle on his paws a little behind him where the light did not reach, huffing the air in slow draws, ears canted toward doors that did not open and footsteps that crept but did not dare to cross into this hall while the young Wolf King glowered at an old iron toy. "I would have a stool," Robb said, more to the air than the men along the walls. "Plain wood, 3 legs, one that rocks. Put it to the side." His voice rolled out and came back as if a stranger were speaking, tall and flat and unfamiliar, and even to his own ear there was the echo of someone else's command in it. An older winter wrapped around the words. "Yes, your grace," said one of the Winterfell men, Halder, whose cheek carried a white seam that would never fully fade now. "It shall be done." "Not here," Robb murmured, shaking his head. "In council. Here, no seat." He moved a little closer to the dais, then stopped. He had given too many commands in these rooms already. One more and he would be stuck to them. "We'll leave the throne as it is," he said, and that sounded to him like a concession that only he would remember. He turned away and walked the long aisle, his steps quieter than they ought to have been. Gray wind rose and kept pace, the pads of his feet barely whispering. Morning made a lattice on the polished stone, and as Robb crossed it the bars of light slid over greaves and knee and turned him into something caged and released with every pace. At the great doors the men pulled. The hinges had not been oiled and cried out as if the hall resisted the day. In the antechamber he stood a moment. The cloth of his cloak was heavier than he remembered it being yesterday, and the collar itched. He could still smell smoke in it, the fat smoke of burned pitch and the hard chemical skirl of wildfire broken and spirited away by his men. The close, sour smell of frightened bodies lingered in the corridor between hall and yard, though the corridor itself had been scrubbed at dawn. Fear did not scrub out easily. It clung to wood the way salt clung to skin. "Your Grace," said the blackfish at his shoulder. Brynden Tully had slept, if at all, leaned against stone somewhere with his boots on and his eyes barely closed. He looked as if sleep were an error that an enemy might exploit. There was a brightness to him that broke only when he blinked. "The streets are quieting. The fishmongers are already bargaining. That is either a good sign or an ill one." "When people think of fish," Robb said, "they are thinking of eating. That's better than fire." The words came without effort. His mind was already elsewhere. Clegane, gone. He slid from the far gate on a horse no one will forget, with a face no one could mistake, and somehow not a hand rose to stop him. A man like that, you do not block with a spear unless you very much want to die. Brynden paused. Or to live miserably. We will have his shadow for some time yet, Robb said. He will know the roads better than any of our scouts. And the boy, the younger Baratheon, is not in the city. The elder is elsewhere, as you know. Brynden's mouth made a thin line that might have been a humorless smile. We keep finding false kings like thorns in sheep's wool. Pull one and two more burrs show. And the queen, in her rooms watched and silent, Brynden said. She raged until the bells. The bells tire even lions, it seems. Robb let breath out. He had expected as much. Have the bells stopped now? Since daybreak. The blackfish shifted, the scales of his mail whispering. I sent men to the septs and the docks. We'll hold the bells until we decide how we ring them going forward. There's a pattern to it in this place, Robb said. Bells for fire, bells for coronations, bells for deaths, bells for weddings, rings and rings and rings. We count our lives in them and pretend there is meaning to the metal. He realized He sounded like a priest and fell silent. The habit of speaking to himself as if to an unseen interlocutor had grown in him since the plains outside the twins had betrayed him and, in the same breath, saved him. He saw it again then, involuntary, the way a man might see a jagged blue when his eyes are pressed too hard. A hall like a throat, a music that sprang from nowhere and everywhere at once. The bodies lifting and turning, the raised cups, the first notes he had half smiled at, the second that had made him begin to look for his sword, the third that Grey Wind had answered with a low, terrible hum, not a growl and not a song. He had followed the sound of his wolf and found men moving toward him with their hands too fast for their smiles, and Catelyn's eyes had shifted once, the way a mother glances at the edge of a cliff when she knows her son is standing too close. He had been spared by a nick on a strap that refused to give, by a blade turned by an ornament only a Fry would have thought to place on a sleeve, by the way the Grachan's careless shoulder had been in the path of an arrow that wanted his heart. That was the gods, or luck, or a debt the world had called in and then refused to count properly. After that moment nothing had the shape it was meant to have, and yet somehow his men had made another shape out of it, a new one with edges still warm from the forge. Everything that had followed, the flood of northern steel through one gate when the other was salted with sworn oaths and betrayal, the bridge taken planks at a time by men who did not stop when the first ranking board gave beneath them. His mother's voice, brisk and cold as river water, making a roster of hostages. The howl Grey Wind had given in the courtyard when Roose Bolton was pinned to the wall, flowed together in his memory like a braided river that could not be undone. Your Grace, the Blackfish said again, drawing him back to the corridor, back to the morning. There are envoys below. From the guilds, the jailers, the keepers of keys, the scribes circle. We have set times, but they are early. They smell a new weather and want to hang their laundry in it, Robb said. He started forward, and men fell in around him without being asked. Grey Wind threaded between their legs, and they made a narrow corridor for him with their knees without looking down. The yard of the Red Keep faced the city with a face that had been trained not to reveal itself. Everything about the yard was measured. The width of the open space to fit 3 companies at review but prevent a cavalry charge, the angle of the eaves to keep rain from pooling near the walls where it could freeze and split stone, the way the wells were placed so that if one were poisoned, the other with its different channel might stay sweet. Someone had worried about this yard a long time ago, and people had been worrying about it ever since. Robb liked that he could feel those worries here. It meant he was not the first to meet a morning uncertain whether he had saved a city or only delayed it. Catelyn waited at the foot of the stairs that came down from a tower. She leaned on nothing. The sight of her not leaning on anything broke his heart fresh every time because it made him realize all over again that she had no one's arm to take. She wore the blue and silver again. The rust red she had worn the night of the feast had been cut into strips by her own hand before daybreak. The strips were bound in her hair now, thin as riverweed and almost the same color, reminders that not everything torn is thrown away. Mother, Robb said. Robb, she said. They stood and let the city breathe around them for a few heartbeats. He studied her face and she studied his. She had not slept long. She had bathed. The water had not taken the lines from around her eyes, but it had softened them into something that looked less like pain and more like thinking. "They'll want bread," she said at last, as if continuing a conversation they had been having since he was a boy. "Bread and a promise, not wine. They have had enough wine. The promise will be worth more than the bread, but will be nothing without it." "We have grain," Robb said. "The granaries beyond the gate of the gods are fuller than expected." His scout had put it another way last night. The hoarders lacked imagination. They thought only of siege. They had not counted on a change of the coins that sealed barn doors. "And the harbor?" she asked. "The river kings guard it," the Blackfish said. "Your brother sends word that no ship leaves without our stamp. He uses his own phrase for it, but the meaning is clear." Caitlyn's mouth almost made a smile. "Your uncle likes his phrases. Let him stamp and phrase to his heart's content so long as the bread moves." Robb glanced toward the far end of the yard where the doors to the kitchen stood propped. He could smell onions and smoke. There was no sweeter scent after a siege than onions in fat. "We will send the first carts to Flea Bottom," he said, "with a guard that we can trust. Not to fight, but to keep the bread from being snatched before it goes where we say it goes." Caitlyn nodded. "And stand them beside the water pumps and bread ovens. Make the lines long and make the lines calm. Find the grandmothers." "The grandmothers?" Brynden blinked. "The city doesn't move for men with swords or kings in cloaks," Caitlyn said. "It moves for grandmothers who shame them. Find the grandmothers and give them each a loaf to hold high, and make them stand where everyone can see them, and the men will behave like boys who want to be told they behaved well. If they don't, the grandmothers will scold them into remembering." She looked toward the walls and squinted at the pale sky. "Bells and grandmothers. That's how you take a city without breaking it." Robb smiled then, the first true one since the gates had opened. "Then let's recruit a corps of the shrewdest and the loudest. They'll be easier to manage than Umber and Mormont," Caitlyn said, so dryly that the Blackfish chuckled. A short sound like two stones striking and deciding not to break. A boy trotted across the yard. He wore the purple sash of the scribal messengers but had not yet learned how to run with authority, only speed. He had damp hair and eyes too big for his face, and his lips were chapped. "Your Grace," he gasped, skidding to a halt and saluting so hard he nearly knocked himself in the forehead. "Letters. From?" Robb asked gently. "The Sept, the High Septon begs audience. The guilds and," the boy swallowed, "the Hand's Tower. A dwarf with a scar sends his name. He writes that he is not the Hand now. But he is in a room with a lock that is broken, and therefore he enjoys a freedom he did not ask for." Robb took the little roll. The handwriting slanted as if it were always about to fall. It was impish that reminded him of the man himself. Tyrion Lannister had shown Robb his hand across the battlefield without their blades ever crossing. Defenses rabid at the Green Fork, cunning letters sent to the Riverlands that had misled more than one lord into revealing his troop counts, a marriage to Sansa that had been a gauntlet thrown before gods and men. Robb had hated him on principle and then stayed his hatred because of the odd reports that filtered up from those poor nights in King's Landing when Sansa had eaten alone and not been harmed as much as she might have been. Tyrion was the portrait of an enemy with unexpected shadows. "Mother," Robb said softly. "I know," Caitlyn said, as if she had been standing inside his chest and seen what he saw. "The girl. She is here." He had not let himself ask. He had not let himself believe anything about his sisters because to believe something about one was to imagine the other, and imagination had been hurting him everywhere. "Sansa is in the Tower of the Hand," Caitlyn replied. "Under guard, though not the sort that bites." "Arya," she stopped. Robb felt his breath catch and hang. "Arya was last seen near the Trident weeks ago. She rides with friends of ours who swear they know the old ways of roads and wood. I do not count her lost. I will not." He nodded once, one of those hard little motions that kept a man from falling apart. "Sansa," he said, "we should go to her." Caitlyn's eyes softened. "You send for her. Do not make her cross this yard alone through all these strange faces. Let her step from one room to another and find her people there." He lifted his hand to the boy. "Bring me this dwarf," Robb said, feeling the way the word did not sit easily in his mouth. "Bring Lord Tyrion Lannister under guard suitable for a man of his wit. 2 old men, not 1 young. And bring Sansa Stark with him, loudly and gently. Do you know how to make noise that sounds kind?" The boy grinned despite himself. "My grandam does," he said. "Then borrow her voice," Robb said, and the boy dashed away as if he had been given something that would let him outrun his own shadow. They waited where they were because Catelyn did not move and Brynden did not suggest that they should. Grey Wind stood and shook himself, skin shivering under coat, and a haze rose from his fur as if he were smoking in the cold. He had changed during the march. He was larger now, his head heavier, his eyes darker. Robb wondered whether his wolf had eaten some southern thing that had made him older. Sometimes when Grey Wind looked at him now, the look belonged not to an animal but to a history. Sansa came before Tyrion. That pleased him more than it should have, though he told himself it could only mean the boy had done what was asked. Make her arrival louder, give her a noise to hide in. A small knot of Northmen and river lords came through the arch, forming a kind of uneven corridor of steel and leather and respect without being told how to make it. In the space between, Sansa Stark walked like someone not yet convinced the ground beneath her was not a trick. She had grown. He could see it at once in the length of her stride and the way her shoulders held. She wore a plain gown, well sewn but not rich, and her hair was braided as if an ant had done it in a hurry and cried while her hands were working. She saw Robb and stopped dead, and for a moment all the mornings of their childhood ran down her face and then were gone. She came forward, slowly at first and then all at once, and when she reached him she put her hand up and touched his cheek with the fingers of a girl and the courage of a woman because she had to be certain. Grey Wind pressed close and sniffed her skirt and the backs of her knees, snorted, and huffed his approval. She laughed, and the laugh was a sound from Winterfell, hollow and warm. "Brother," she said. That one word cracked something in him that had been set badly. "Sansa," he answered, and gathered her as if the whole city were trying to pour her back into the combed hair and handled manners it knew, and he would not allow it. He did not realize he was crying until he tasted salt. He pulled back and looked at her, and she at him, and they studied what war had added where boy and girl had left off. "I married him," she blurted, and then bit her lip and closed her eyes as if she had said it wrong. "I know," Robb said. "We'll sort that snarl together. You are here. That is the end and the beginning of it." Her eyes opened slowly. He never hurt me," she said, as if she were setting down the last of a bundle she had been carrying for a very long road. "I will count that on his side," Robb said. "No more and no less than it is worth." The sound of short legs, quick and deliberate, intruded. Tyrion Lannister entered with 2 guards flanking him who looked like men chosen for the task precisely because they were too old to find pleasure in it. He walked with his chin up, the scar along his face an angry coin in the morning light. He wore an expression that was neither smile nor frown, a mask that said he had made peace with being examined as if he were a curious stone. "My lord," Robb said. He would not say "Your Grace," though his mother would have forgiven the courtesy. He was not certain whom that title belonged to now. The throne behind him had not told him. "Thank you for the letter. If I had known how quickly paper could conjure wolves, I might have scribbled in that style more often," Tyrion said. He bowed as much as his back permitted. "May I say what I am and am not?" "You may always state what you are," Catelyn said coolly. "You will find less agreement if you describe what you are not." "I am a man who has lost almost everything worth the having," Tyrion said, and glanced at Sansa and did not flinch when she did not look away. "I am not a fool. I am not my father. I am the man your son will find most useful if he means to put this city to rights without cutting its throat to do it." He looked at Robb. "You don't want the chair." He jerked his head toward the hall and the dark thing inside. "That shows," Robb said. "But no, I don't." He felt his mother's gaze touch his cheek like a cool hand. "What I want is bread in bellies and a way home that does not leave a wake of fire behind me so bright it bleaches my banners." "What you want," Tyrion said softly, "is a different story than the one you were handed." and now you have a room in which to tell it. You will need ink, and a better chair than the one that bites." He rubbed his jaw. "I would like a bath." "On that," Caitlin said. "We can agree." Robb stood with them, with his sister and mother and the Lannister whose greatest talent was his way around the truth, and felt the city draw its breath again. He saw, in his mind, lines of people along the streets. Old women with bread held high, boys carrying buckets for the old women when their arms grew tired, men shuffling their feet because there were wolves on the walls now, and that meant the old ways of standing and shoving must be put away for a time. He saw the guilds coming with their petitions folded into squares that had been unfolded and refolded until the creases were maps of their fear. He saw the September with its fat domes, where men would speak to gods about what had happened, and the small old gods would tucked away like a forgotten prayer where he would go because he could not help it. He went there before noon. It was smaller than the one at Winterfell by a measure that could not be counted with rope. The trees had grown weird in this southern light, their leaves more like coins than hands, and the pool was a sad brown thing with a rim of scum the color of old tea. There was no weirwood. There was a stump where one had been, and it was carved badly by someone who had tried to give a face back to a god after some other man had taken it down. The sight of it tightened something behind his ribs and then released it again with a long ache. He knelt in the damp and felt the moss cool his skin through the mail, and he put his hands on the stump's ragged top as if it were a table. "I have done what I set out to do," he whispered, uncertain to whom he spoke now, "which is to live, and to keep those I could keep living. I am here because men smarter than me tried to make me into a story that ended in a hall with a song and knives, and they failed because my wolf sang wrong and my mother counted faster than their blades. Now I have a city." He closed his eyes. "I can take a crown, but it will mean the wrong thing. I can leave and let another take it, but it will mean a worse thing. Tell me how you make a road through a marsh without sinking." The wind did not change. A drop fell from a leaf to the pond and made a small ring that touched the rim and stopped. Gray Wind lay a little distance off, chin on paws, and did not sleep. Robb could feel that he was awake because part of his mind had rested there since he was a boy, and that part felt the attention. Sometimes in battle he had leaned on Gray Wind's thought like a fence post. Now he leaned on it because the city was too much like a tide. A footstep behind him. He did not turn. His mother came and knelt without comment, letting mud stain the hem of her skirt. They sat together before the hacked stump of a god and listened to a city count itself down from fear. "You acted swiftly," she murmured after a time, "at the twins. Here, I have seen you do it again and again, your father's son. You have done it well. The thing that comes now is slower. It does not brook speed. It is made of rooms and papers and faces that change because you tell them something they do not like and they go away and return with a different one." "I know," he said miserably, and was ashamed that he sounded like a boy being told to sit through a long winter embroidery. "I will help," Caitlin said. "Your uncle will help. The men who see the shape of a city like a loom and can place warp and weft in it and make cloth that holds will help. You have more of them than you think." He nodded. "Tyrion will help. For a price." "Everything is for a price," Caitlin said. "Our task is to set the prices and make certain we can pay them. I would have said otherwise to you once. Now I must prepare you for the world as it comes. If that makes me hard, forgive me later." "I forgive you now," he said. "Then you must forgive yourself next," she answered. "For what you will be when this is over." She hesitated. "For what you will have undone. Men think victory is a great placing of stones atop other stones until one has a tower that cannot be shaken. It is more often finding the stones that should not have been put there and taking them out without bringing the whole down on your head." He let the image sit between them. He had climbed walls as a boy. He knew the sound a stone made when it slid, the sudden bright panic, the dust leaping up like startled birds. "How do you know what to pull?" "If I knew, your father would be here," she said simply. "We did not know. We tried and we did not know. And because we did not know, a stone fell on him in a courtyard far from home. Since then I have learned to run my fingers over the walls and feel for stones that are too warm or too cold. I expect they will scrape my hands before this is done. I wish, he began, and then stopped. He wished too many things. I know, she said, but wishes are for when you have a choice of cakes and can take only one. Now there are loaves to bake and mouths to feed, and the gods will not listen to your wish until you have done the work before you. They rose together, and when they left the gods Robb felt a kind of tiredness that fit his bones like a familiar coat. He could wear this through the day. Tyrion Lannister took his bath and then came to the council chamber in a robe that had been made for a taller man. He looked less like a curiosity and more like a human being. If the grime had been part of his armor, he had set it aside willingly. Around the table sat men Robb trusted and men he did not, and a few whose names were still smudged at the edges because he had not yet learned how to sharpen them. The table itself was scarred and had a notch at the edge near Robb's hand where some previous hand had dealt too hard with a cup. He kept his fingers from the notch to avoid making an inadvertent promise to an old habit. "We must consider the Golden Company," said a lord of the Reach who had bent a knee as if he were performing a dance rather than an act of survival. "They may be across the sea," Tyrion said with a faint smile. "They are always across the sea until they are not, and then by the time someone has finished saying their name with the proper degree of awe, they have committed to the wrong prince and gone elsewhere. Think rather of the cells words within our walls, my lord. There are more of them than you think, and their captains will want to know what is expected of them now that their old employers have moved from room to room in the same house. We pay them, we hold them," muttered Great John Umber. "We starve them, they slink away. Simpler than talking." "Make your sums, my lord," Tyrion said. "You can pay them to slink away. It is cheaper than paying them to stay and cheaper than fighting them when you have insulted them through neglect. Half their captains would take a purse to leave at speed if given an honorable story to tell themselves about it. Give it to them. We will keep the ones who like our food and our girls and the way the light falls in the yard." "It is well you know how the light falls," Brynden said, not quite smiling, "since you will be leading them about like children following a cat in a barn." "We will need a cat in every barn," Tyrion said, "and bread in every belly. The queen's bees will swarm otherwise, and they will sting those nearest the bread ovens first." At the mention of the queen, Catelyn raised a hand. "Cersei Lannister will try to make a viper's nest from any room you put her in," she said. "Do not shut her in a place that touches kitchens or keys. Then a high room with one door and 2 guards who did not come to the city yesterday," Robb said. "And let someone clever carry plates to her and count the knives that go up and count the knives that come down, and do not hesitate to bring fewer if it makes her think. But do not starve her. She will make poetry of her hunger. I do not intend to feed that." Tyrion's eyebrows lifted, and he glanced at Catelyn as if to say, "See? The boy sees." Catelyn did not give him the satisfaction of returning the look. "And Joffrey?" asked Lady Meage Mormont with a scowl that had been carved long ago and would not soften even in the bath. "The cub left with his tail under him. Will he turn and come clawing back?" "He is where his mother said he is when she wanted him not troubled," Tyrion said dryly. "Under a bed. He will not come clawing. He will come complaining, if he comes. But perhaps he will not come at all. Boys grow tired when their voices change and their toys involve heads." He did not look at Sansa, who sat with her hands folded, a small pale monument of attention at Robb's left, but Robb felt the piece of attention that bent toward her, no matter how careful Tyrion tried to be. He was too clever not to know when his words cut near. "There is a thing we must speak, but do not name it as if our saying is alone that makes it true," Brynden said softly and looked at Robb. "The North." "I have not forgotten," Robb said. He could taste snow at the back of his tongue the way a man tastes iron after biting it. "We came for justice. We declared ourselves free. We meant to go home. Now we are in the South's heart holding the South's breath in our hands. Every beat of it costs us something. We must decide if we keep counting." He looked at Sansa. "And there is Stark in the city who cannot become North if she becomes other." He did not say the words annulment or marriage or duty. Some things, if said aloud too soon, solidified into shapes that were harder to set down later. Sansa held his gaze a long breath and then, astonishingly, smiled a little. It was a hard smile, the kind that comes at the end of a long hymn when the voice is worn thin but the tune is carried anyway. "In the north," she said, "we say what we mean. In the south," Tyrion put in, "we say what we can and wait to see which syllables survive the afternoon. We will be both north and south until the snow falls hard in our hair again," Robb said. "Then we will decide what we have been. Send ravens. To White Harbor. To Winterfell. To Bear Island. Tell them where we are, that we have bread and a plan for bread, that we will not leave them empty because we have filled others." "And to the wall," Catelyn said. A quiet fell over the table, the kind that does not belong to a room but to what presses outside its windows. Robb had add the letters from the watch, the ones that sounded like old men who had seen fire where snow should be. He had folded them and unfolded them, and each time the ink had crawled a little more across the page, as if the letters themselves wanted to flee the news they bore. If a man did not look directly at those words, they stayed where they were. If he stared long, they seemed to shift, as if telling him that the world he recognized had a seam and something he did not recognize had worked its claw under it and was tugging. "Ravens to the wall," Robb said, "and one to my father's friend there. Let him tell me in words that sound like his, not scribes' marks. Let him tell me how much they need and whether they have men. I will send what I can. I will not tell the city why I send it. They would not understand, and I have too few grandmothers to explain everything." When council ended, the day had climbed to a height that made the yard glare. Heat woke smells in the stone that had been asleep since last summer. Mildew and old wine and horse piss that had seeped so deep no brush could scratch it out. The wagons rolled and the people lined, and the grandmothers stood and scolded and laughed and rapped knuckles and put slices into open palms with the little flourish of the truly generous. A boy with a barrel chest began to beat it with flat hands, not as a call to arms but to dancing, and men shifted from foot to foot because there is always dancing in the human body whether the head permits it or not. Sansa found him in the shade of a buttress later, having evaded his guards as she had evaded worse. She moved differently outdoors than in, as if walls had taught her a set of steps and the sky told her another. She stood beside him, not quite touching, and watched the lines of people gather and break like waves. He could smell juniper water in her hair and something medicinal beneath it. He wondered what man in a tower had given her a bottle meant for bruises. "He was kind sometimes," she said without preamble. "I know," Robb said, "and unkind sometimes. That too." She drew a breath that tried to become a sob and did not quite manage it. "They made me sing. They made me smile. They made me say words I did not mean, and some I did because otherwise they would take something from someone else, and I thought, if a song could be the price for someone else's skin, then sing. But songs do not pay for much in the end." She looked at him with a steadiness that moved him more than any tears could have. "I want to be Sansa Stark again. I do not know if that is a thing that exists." "It exists," he said, "but it may be a thing we must build. Like a bridge, an arch. At first it will not look like a bridge or an arch. It will look like materials lying about, too heavy to lift. Then one day we will set a stone and another and find that an arch is there and will not fall, and we will both be surprised and tell people we meant it that way all along." "You sounded like Maester Luwin then," she whispered. He closed his eyes. Shame and gratitude twisted together in him like strands of a rope. "I miss him," Robb said. "I miss all the ones I did not properly miss at the time." They stood and said nothing for a while. The sun slid and the shadows turned their faces to other walls. A raven passed overhead, flapping as if every stroke were a decision it could have made differently. "Arya will be angry," Sansa said at last, and smiled a real smile this time, small and fierce, "that we took a city without her. She will be angry that the city remains, more like," Robb said, and they both laughed, and the laugh laid a small stone in the arch he had spoken of. Night returned too soon to a place where morning had been late. A city is a creature that naps in the afternoon and wakes at dusk with opinions. Robb walked the walls with Brynden and 2 guards who had learned the trick of silence. The harbor bruised itself along the curve of land, and lights pricked like stitches. Far out, a lantern on a mast swayed, and he felt the tug in his body to go that way, east, away, anywhere that had no bells. He pulled himself back. The wall was solid beneath his feet, and a wolf paced quietly somewhere below. "We will have suitors," Brinden said. "Lords," Robb said wearily. "I know. Not only lords," his uncle said. "Ideas, allegiances, grand bargains that require your head in their ledger. A man is never so attractive as when he has taken a city he does not want." "I want it to be quiet," Robb said. "Is that childish?" "It is not childish to want quiet," Brinden answered. "It is childish to think you can keep it by wanting. You must build it. That is the next siege. Different ladders. The same drop if you misstep." When he returned to his rooms, a strip of moon lay on the threshold like something forgotten. He stepped over it and found he was already braced for an attack that did not come. He took off the cloak that flagged his rank to anyone who had not guessed and hung it on a peg that had been polished by countless hands. He took off the pauldron and the gloves and the mail, and he felt lighter and more exposed, and neither feeling was comfortable. He poured water from a ewer and drank, and when he set the cup down, a knock sounded, small and purposeful. "Come," he said, and Tyrion Lannister entered with a bundle of papers and the tired smile of a man who knows he should have made different choices years ago but has decided to make better ones now simply to spite the world. "A foot shorter and you would be a child," Robb said without thinking, and then winced at the cruelty of it. "And a foot taller and I would be my brother," Tyrion replied evenly. "And then we would both be having a worse evening. May I?" He did not wait, but came to the table and spread the papers for Robb to see. Lists. Names of men who can be bought cheaply to leave and more dearly to stay, the former being more numerous, thank the gods. Envy. Entries of grain. A curious and incomplete ledger of wildfire jars that I believe to be a lie, but a lie that is at least consistent with the man who wrote it. He is dead. He died without finishing the column. I thought you might like to finish it for him with a 0. Robb ran his hand down the column. He liked the feeling of the numbers under his palm. They did not move when touched. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. "You could have fled and found a boat and sailed anywhere. There are islands where a name is exchanged for a song and a skin of wine." "I have never been fond of boats," Tyrion said, "and I am weary of fleeing rooms that I did not arrange. Better to sit in one and write the words on the wall myself and see who reads them." He looked up. "You are not the man I expected when I dreamed as a boy about enemies. I do not like to be surprised, but I like this surprise." Robb raised his eyes. "I will count that on your side." "Good," Tyrion said, and gathered the papers again. "You will face a choice sooner than you prefer. Crowns are impatient. In the meanwhile, let us make it so that whoever wears what is on that chair behind you cannot do without what we put in the city's mouth and hands. Bread and work and drains that do not overflow." He made a face. "Especially drains." "Especially," Robb agreed. "I will not have my sobriquet be Robb the Foul." "Robb the Builder," Tyrion suggested. "But I think that one is taken." Robb smiled despite the heaviness of the day. "Good night, Lord Tyrion." "Good night, Your Grace," Tyrion answered, the title smooth and almost affectionate, like a stone polished by long water. He paused at the door. "I hope you dream of snow," he said. "It is cleaner, even when blood touches it." After he had gone, Robb stood a long time listening to the city beyond his shutters. From the high windows he could just see a lick of the bay, and beyond that blackness that went on until it curved into something that was not his concern. He had taken a city. He did not want it. Now he would work to keep it, because wanting had nothing to do with having and less to do with duty. He lay down and let exhaustion take him as a fisherman's net takes a tired fish. Slowly, snugly, without malice. He woke before the dawn again, because habit had become his master. The hallways smelt of bread, and the kitchen spoke in the voice of water and knives and laughter, and for a little while the city seemed almost coachable. He wrote 3 letters with his own hand. One to White Harbor with requests as clear as river water. One to the Night's Watch, to a man whose face he had not seen in many years but whose hand he could picture around a mug. One to Riverrun, where rivers braided and unbraided as if to remind men that joining and separating were both natural things and not cause for poems except to those who needed a reason to lift a cup. When the ravens went up, they did not complain. They lifted their black knives and beat the air with them and cut into the day and were gone. For a moment they were all he could see. Small moving letters against a pale page that would be full by noon and scored with corrections by night. He watched until the last dot vanished, then turned and walked toward the morning's first audience. The guilds came in their best, erosion disguised as tradition. Robb listened. He did not promise what he could not give. He gave what he could promise. He learned the names that mattered, the men who did not speak the longest but whose sentences had weights tied to them. He agreed to pay the pump keepers with grain instead of coin for a month because that is how a city's throat stays clear. He ordered the old iron locks on the granaries taken and recast into nails and hinges, and gave the new keys to women whose faces he did not yet know, and told the guards to remember those faces with the same devotion they would remember a banner. He walked the fish market and let a woman slap his sleeve with her wet hand because he had not raised the price of salt and she wanted someone to know a good thing when they saw it. He ordered 2 men punished for stealing loaves, not because the loaves mattered but because the line had to. He pardoned a boy for the same because his sister was sick and he had tried to bring her something that would ease. He named a midwife to the council of small matters and watched the lords try to decide whether to be offended. He had not seen Sansa that morning. That worried him in a dull way, like the ache of a tooth. He had people to speak to her and with her. He had given her a room near his mother's and asked women he trusted to stand in her doorway and make it so that anyone who wished to pass had to meet 2 steady sets of eyes. Still, the part of him that counted arrows when none had yet flown wanted to be sure. He found her in the September of Baelor, where she stood in a pool of colored light that had been poured through glass and set gently on the floor. She was listening to a priest whose beard was the white of thin milk. The man was speaking about the mother, and for once the words did not sound as if he meant to twist them around a throat later. Sansa saw Robb and lowered her head, finishing the phrase with her lips, and then she came to him and they walked out together past the silent heads of statuary that watched without seeing. "I kept thinking of father," she said when they stood in the air again. "At the steps and the bells and the swords, and the way the light falls here. I don't know why. Maybe because I am standing where he stood. I think of him everywhere," Robb said. The admission cost him something and gave him more. "Do you remember the winter mornings when he would look at the sky before we did anything? As if the sky had written orders in frost." "Yes," she said and smiled. "And sometimes he would tell us what the sky had written, and sometimes he would refuse, and we would be angry and think him unk. Intisk. He was teaching us how to watch." "We are still learning," Robb said. "I hope we learn fast." They crossed the square where pigeons strutted with the absurd conviction of those who believe themselves decorative. A girl ran past with a loaf held like a prize, and an older woman called after her sternly and laughed. They passed a soldier asleep against a pillar, and Robb paused and did not wake him because his head was slumped in a way that told a story and his hands were clean. The city was breathing in, breathing out. For a few heartbeats, Robb believed it was possible to teach it to do so without wheezing. At midday, a man from the Riverlands arrived under banner small enough to fit inside a sleeve. He had a face like a wedge. He bowed and handed Robb a square of stiff paper. The seal had been broken and mended. Robb turned it and saw the letters he had feared and expected and not wanted to hold in his hand again so soon. "My lord," the man said carefully, as if each word needed to be placed on a table without chipping. "I am to tell you that news from the Trident is mixed, and that mixture may curdle quickly." He swallowed. "A girl with a sword and a temper passes through inns like a rumor. Wolf banners share bread with a man who once wore a cloak of sand and salt. A red woman burns driftwood and looks at the sky, and something moves in the forests that men do not name even to their dogs." Sansa made a small sound. Robb did not look at her because if he did he would think too much and that would make he could not do anything. He folded the paper. He put it aside. He wiped his hand as if ink had spilled. "Thank you," he said. "Eat, drink, then carry an answer." He did not know what answer yet. He had to think. He could not wait to think. He moved, in that way that had saved his life before, forward, because forward was the only direction offered. He turned to Brinden. Find me the map of the river roads that shows the tracks no one uses because they flood. Find me a man who knows how to ride them when they flood. Find me a woman who knows where the old standing stones are, because I have learned that roads do not always go where maps say, but standing stones stand where they stood even when men have forgotten. And the girl? Brinden asked gently. He could say girl because he alone in the room had called her little one when she was 3, and he had helped her climb a rock that was taller than she knew. She will be where the blood is not, Robb said, because she goes to look at blood, and then, when it is sharpest, she goes away. We will not chase her with a banner. We will make the world she must cross softer, and she will cross it faster. He opened his hands and then closed them because both positions felt helpless. He sent men out then, and letters and promises like coins that he hoped would not be counterfeit when tested in teeth. He examined the stores and wrote numbers until numbers lost their meaning. He spoke with Tyrion late into the night about drainage and about judges and about how the city measured linen and how to keep the dockmen from losing 2 fish out of 3 between boat and basket. He watched Catelyn assemble a small court of women and old men who knew how quarrels begin in alleys and how to end them before knives grow warm. He slept in snatches and dreamt of a hall with music that would never again be only music, and of a chair that would bite him if he forgot where he was. The second day dawned less grudgingly. The third brought a storm that rinsed soot from faces and made gutters speak. The fourth delivered something like order to 2 neighborhoods that had been allowed to court chaos for sport and profit. On the 5th, a ship from White Harbor entered the bay with its sails patched but its hold fat, and the captain came ashore and clasped Robb with hands that smelt of salt and iron and kin. On the 6th, a raven from the wall came in with feathers missing and a belligerent stare, and the words on its little collar were short and blunt and bled into one another. A different cold touched Robb's neck as he read them, the kind that comes when a man opens a door expecting rain and finds instead a night with something moving in it that is not wind. He read the message aloud to his mother and to his uncle and to Tyrion and to Sansa. He did not raise his voice. He let the words carry themselves. They did not need help. They dropped onto the table plain as stones. Fewer men than we need. More darkness than we can see. Send what you can spare and what you think you cannot. There is no line between walls and woods anymore. The line is inside men's heads, and it grows faint. He folded the paper. He felt older than he had in any hall lit with torches. He looked at the chair that bit and thought of ice. We hold a city, he said softly. We will hold it and feed it and teach it to breathe without panicking. But we are not done with winter. He looked at Sansa and then past her, as if he could see through stone and down roads and around bends to where a small girl with dirty knees and a blade like a whisper might laugh at something that was not a joke and refuse to be told to stand where the floor was clean. He smiled despite himself, a thin, stubborn thing. No, we are not done with winter, so we will be ready when it comes to meet us where we live now as well as where we were born. Outside, the bells were silent. The grandmothers stood with their loaves like small queens. The drains did not overflow. In the harbor, a ship's lantern swung and did not fall. In the Godswood, a carved stump watched a young man unroll a map that was not of land but of people and of choices and of days that would be stacked like stones until they were a wall that he could lean against. Gray wind lifted his head and scented the air, and something in his low, pleased rumble made Robb feel, for a moment, that the world could be taught better habits. He reached for the next letter. He reached for the next morning. He chose the next stone and placed it where the arch told him it belonged.